Good afternoon. Thank you for registering and attending this webinar. Today we're going to be talking about the value of your security program, and basically an overview of some metrics and other items that you can kind of build into your program to get a better sense of where you're working operationally and being able to present that both upwards and downwards within your organization. So quick introduction, my name is Joe Moles. I'm the Director of Detection Operations at Red Canary. Basically what I do here is I herd a group of SOC monkeys. I run the SOC and our detection operations team. And our job is to find the bad guy in our customers' endpoints. So what we're going to talk about, like I mentioned, this is going to be a framework of reporting for your security program. It's going to be pretty much operationally focused. We're going to be talking about taking technical data and driving those into business objectives, both from tuning and getting more value out of your security tools and out of your team, but also showing value upwards to your direct management and up all the way up potentially to the C-level. Talking through those methods of identifying performance issues and opportunities, some simple calculations that I've used and that I use currently to prioritize our alerting and find opportunities for tuning within our platform, and then just some guidelines to use that information to drive some strategic decisions in your operations. So first things first, as part of kind of building out this framework and everything, one of the key points is you want to try and measure everything. So look at all of the opportunities all across all your tools, looking at everything within your portfolio and everything that your team is working on. Start collecting that, collecting information around that. Measure everything. If you measure everything up front, you have a better opportunity to use that down the road, even if you're not using it now. Other things to think about: what's the view that you're looking at? Are you looking at it a very tactical view, or are you looking at it from a very strategic view, or somewhere in the middle? The other things you need to think about is where does it start, where does it stop? And we'll dig into that a little bit more. One of the biggest things is you want to try and get all those measurements into one system. It makes it easier to kind of get multiple views, and you're not pulling data from multiple systems once you have that centralized into one central data store. Other things to think about is your goals and audience. What's the story you're trying to tell? Are you talking about the effectiveness of your program? Are you looking for individual accountability across your tools, across your team, across your organization? Are you using this for continuous improvement, looking to further mature your program? It could be all of these, but also then things you're thinking about as you're looking at taking different lenses across this data set is who you're presenting to. You're going to present data differently and from a different lens when you're looking at talking to the C-level versus talking to your peers and other technical teams, or measuring it across any of your direct reports if you're running your program yourself. So where do we start? Like I said, we're talking mostly focused around operational. When I say that, I'm talking about monitoring and incident response, SOC type operations, security engineering, that type of thing, and then also your compliance and vulnerability management. First point that we want to kind of capture in any of this is where the particular item that we're measuring starts. So when I'm talking about monitoring and incident response, DFIR, I'm talking about the initial occurrence. So when did this first happen? When did the bad thing first start? Where did the malware first get out of the system? Where did the compromise first occur? If we're talking about compliance or vulnerability management, then we're talking about when did this first get identified? When did your scan run that identified this vulnerability? When did the audit or compliance finding come in that you're trying to remediate? And that's where you're going to initially start your the timer or the clock of that you're going to measure from that point. Other things here from a monitoring perspective, kind of the key metric is from occurrence, so when did that bad thing happen, to detection. And we'll further down, we'll kind of define where we classify detection happening. And then from the response, it's from the other half of that, from where this was detected to when that was remediated. When did the hole get closed? When did the malware get removed? And then finally, thinking about this, from that remediation standpoint, or from the closure time, we're talking about when this is actually completely finished and confirmed. So, and if we're again talking about vulnerability management, we're talking about when did we get a clean scan, when did the audit report come back confirming that this has been wrapped up and we're good to go. From a IR perspective, when have we gone through and confirmed that there's no further activity representative of that compromise? So, talking about who you are, what is your role within this aspect, and where does that place you within how you're looking at this data? Again, using the two kind of splits between security operations and the vulnerability management. Usually, I try and target this at the system owner. They're the one who owns the issue. I'm a big fan of, from a vulnerability management and audit, is having the system owner as the responsible party. They're the ones that we're measuring against. They're the ones accountable to getting that patched. I will mention, and I talk to people that, when it comes to this type of information, this is a great opportunity to also build some camaraderie and build some buy-in into your security program by, if you can socialize and get your management to buy into the idea that the system owner is the accountable party for for part of security, for patching those holes, for maintaining their systems. It makes your job a lot easier and makes your program more effective. From IR perspective, there's a couple different areas we're talking about. It could be talking about a specific tool. So maybe it's your IDS, maybe it's your SEM program, maybe it's your firewall. You could be talking about a provider. Maybe you have an MDR provider, maybe you have an MSSP, maybe you have both that are running different operations as part of your program. Or you could be talking all the way down to something like a particular signature. So that particular IDS signature, that particular watch list on your EDR, particular SEM alert, SEM signature or rule that you've built into your platform. And even down to, if you're have your team doing threat hunts, use these same kind of metrics and model this as those individual threat hunts. Put some control, put some control around that, put some recording around that, and track that. That's a key part of your responsibility, your program of showing that effectiveness. So these are all things that you want to feed into those measurements as you're building this out. So start talking about some definitions here. First one, severity. You want to make sure that you're normalizing your severities across the program. So you want consistent, whether that's a high, medium, low. If you're using some other, stoplight, some other criticality, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever that is, you want to make sure that you're using a consistent severity across everything that you're measuring. You want to clearly define what a false positive is. Depending on your program and depending on how you're presenting that, and depending on who you're talking about, a false positive could mean multiple things. Maybe it's false positive, and this signature, this event, this detection, this threat hunt, this whatever is false positive because what it was intending to find is not what it found. In a different context, in a different organization, a false positive may mean that this is a false positive because this is authorized, even though within other contexts that might be considered a violation. So maybe it's somebody using some sort of dual use tools or something like that. And so you need to make sure you have clear definition of what classifies a false positive, so that as you're presenting some part of these numbers, you have consistent reporting across all of it, and everybody's saying the same things. Same thing goes from a false negative. False negative, the way I classify that is something bad happened and the expected system, signature, tool, person didn't find that and it was found or notified later through some other channel. Making sure, again, that you clearly classify that. But then also, as part of this program, right out of the gate, make sure you're doing a postmortem on each one of those. Those are, from a security perspective, that's one of the worst things that you can have is a false negative. I tell my team, I can accept a certain level of false positives, but I can't accept any false negatives. So every time you get a false negative, you should be doing a, queuing that up for postmortem and making sure you're using that as part of your ongoing continuous feedback loop and continuous learning and continuous training across your organization. Coming back to, the idea of everything goes into one place. So this could be very complicated, this could be very simple, but however you're kind of building it out, you want to make sure that all of your reporting, all of the response times, everything that your false positive rates, all that's being fed into one central store. From that, then you try and record that at the most granular level that you can, and then you can kind of zoom in and zoom out across those numbers to, fit your audience and fit the lens that you're trying to do. And an example, an organization I worked in, we actually used for our whole engineering and IR program, we used just a simple open source help desk tool, and then we fed all of our alerting into that, and then used, and then put in some custom fields to then track the areas that we needed to track, and use that as the central repository. And then we just used some simple Google API charting to build out dashboards for the different views that we wanted to present, and we built a program about that. If you have something else, maybe you can build this in your ticketing system, your help desk system, whatever that kind of looks like from you, whether that's out of the box or that's something custom. Just make sure you want to make sure it's all in one place. Also, I didn't mention this at the beginning. I want to throw it out real quick. If you have questions, please feel free to post those, and I'll kind of answer those as we go along. So a couple other things that we're talking about. How do we present this information? So I'm a big fan of trend lines. From a what's happening over a time slice. You can see the when and where, inbound versus outbound, whatever the kind of, you can visually see where things are changing. Other areas that are helpful to visualize is your false positive rate. Understanding what your team's appetite is for false positive. Maybe you have a very small team, and so you need very accurate detection, and you need very accurate alerting, and you need very accurate information out of your tool set. Maybe that a higher false positive rate is acceptable. Also, that false positive rate comes in and is you can start directly correlating that to cost. If you're looking at your tool set and you say, hey, we need to cut budget, we need to cut, we need to look at renewals, where are you getting value? What percentage of the information coming out of a particular tool is adding value and, actually generating actionable information? The other side of this, you can look at this from a very tactical level. Are we talking about tuning a specific tool, so looking at specific signatures or specific rules? Are these producing a lot of noise that's consuming a lot of time and money by in human cycles, or is this something that fires and pretty consistently adds value? That's also going to be important as we get further through this, talking through this about where we have value and where we have priority and what we should be responding to first. So just by capturing this, some simple numbers, we can look at it in a couple different ways. And then one of the questions I got here that kind of relates to this. So if we're talking about headcount on a team, what are some ways that we can use some of these numbers to talk to where we have or where we need headcount? Again, looking at this, This conversation that you have to have, and it's a cost conversation. So looking at, where are we consuming too much time? Or is the tools taking too much information? Are we getting through things in a timely fashion? Then you need to start slicing that information and looking at it and being able to use these to communicate upwards to say, hey, look, we're getting through this information in an appropriate amount of time. Our false positive rate is at an acceptable level, but we're still not closing things from start to finish is still taking longer than is acceptable. And being able to correlate that then to a cost related to compromise or those delays. That's how I've presented it before. So it's balancing, using these numbers to show a balance between the amount of effort that your team has been able to do to the value that they're providing by identifying, identifying bad things in your environment. So drilling in more on the IR and monitoring side, so using this idea of capturing all these metrics and everything, we're looking for opportunities to tune. We're looking at, again, what tools and signatures are adding value and what's causing too much noise. So going back to that false positive idea, within my current organization, we have a bit higher appetite for false positives. So we have signatures that we look at and behaviors that we look for that we look for at a much broader level and accept that there's going to be a fair amount of false positives with that. But then that also balances out by the more broad we're looking at, the more broadly we're able to find bad things and look for bad behaviors. But there's a balance and there's a trade-off within the amount of time, human cycles that takes, alert fatigue, those type of things. So you have to have a clear understanding of where your balance is. Again, if you have a very small team that's running all the tools, building all the tools, and then also responding to all alerts, looking at how much time is that taking them, looking at different alerts, looking at different tools and saying, okay, our false positive rate, we're only getting 25% of the alerts coming out of this particular system or this particular signature are actionable. And then also looking at, how long those alerts are taking your team to look through. Maybe a higher false positive rate is okay because it takes only a couple seconds each time for them to look through. Or maybe these are taking a lot of time in your MSSP or some tool that your IDS or some other tool is producing, a low fidelity alerts, and it's taking your team, hours each time those alerts come through. And so having that clear understanding of the false positive rate, but then also the amount of time that it's taking for the triage and review of those are two interesting numbers that'll help you to understand where there's really a cost and benefit within the program. So start digging into this. So some simple math that we use, no next-gen, no machine learning or artificial intelligence required. Just some simple calculations that'll help both prioritize and show some value. So these are the numbers that I use within our team. So we classify any items that we alert to our customer base as either malicious, suspicious, or unwanted. Unwanted being your simple adware, your toolbars, things like that. Suspicious is activity that we can't directly quantify to an actor or to a specific threat, but it's something that, hey, this just kind of smells funny and it doesn't seem normal for the environment. And then malicious is all of your malware, compromise, anything like that that's going on in the environment. So we give each of these, every time we push an alert, whatever signature that we used or behavior that identified that, we give it a score based on what that alert was. And then we look at the conversion rate. So what percentage of each of those produced a true positive or actually converted into a notification to our customer. So here's a couple examples, and what's interesting in using this concept is that it normalizes or it balances that prioritization or that value, regardless if it's this is a high risk, low occurrence, or if this is a low risk, high occurrence type of alert. it'll normalize and you'll be able to prioritize appropriately within your event rate. So in this one, it's a high event count. So if we look at it, this is, false positive rates at 75%. So only 25% of the notifications that came out of this particular behavior have actually converted into something actionable or alertable to my customer base. If we look, going through the chart here, if we look at it, so overall only 0.3% converted to something malicious, about a little over 1% converted to malicious suspicious activity, and then about 35% converts to unwanted of the of the information, total. Then basically we take each of those percentages and multiply them by that impact score, and then we get a total impact of 0.5. So on a score, on a scale of 0 to 15, this has only got a score of 0.5. So when I'm looking at this, or I'm comparing it against other notifications or other alerts, and I can say, okay, this is probably this is going to have a higher false positive rate. This is not going to be as much of a priority from my team to look at, and it's going to be not as much of a priority, as far as confidence level. And so I don't want my team to spend as much time on this. It's still something that they should look at, but at the same time, it's not something that I'm going to be, it's going to be lights and sirens. I need to wake people up to go look at this. This is also looking at this. This may be something that if I'm, the alert load on my team is getting high, this is probably something I want to have my team drill into and say, hey, how can we tune this up? How can we get a little bit higher fidelity out of this? Looking at the other side of this, we have something, fairly low event count. So there's only been 39 total events versus the previous that was in the, hundreds of thousands of events that it generated within the time window that we reviewed. But of those, 27 converted into alerts. If we looked at this, almost the majority of these, 90% of these, converted into something that we classed as malicious, and then 2.5% converted into suspicious. So out of our 15-point impact score, we have a score of 14. So this is going to be something that I'm going to want somebody to get out of bed and go look at right away. This is going to be within the day's work. This comes in, this is probably going to be right near the top of priority for somebody to review and look for. And what's interesting, like I say, so this may only happen a few times in a given time cycle. But over that time cycle, whenever this does happen, it's going to bounce right to the top because we know that this is typically converts to something bad. So that balance and using those simple calculations, it provides a really interesting way to normalize both alerts that are coming from high fidelity and alerts that are coming low fidelity. And you can build this into your program. This is what coming back to that idea of using the same measures across all your platforms. So maybe this is maybe one of these was a really targeted SEM alert. One was a custom IDS alert. And you can look at those and compare them, in the same view and understand the priority of those when they come into your team for review. So other question, and one of the questions that came up is, and that somewhat relates to this. So using these numbers to identify efficiency and improvements, but how do you also communicate that as a risk measure? And it's an interesting challenge. Part of this, part of what you can do, and part of the way you can initially build this in from an operational standpoint is in that classification and that prioritization. Maybe high, medium, low isn't what you use, or maybe you add another score on there related to risk within your organization. Maybe this is something from the keys of the kingdom environment, gets an additional bump, or that you prioritize that instead of by high, medium, low, it's by where in the environment it's happening. So something within the executive suite's laptop is gets a higher score than something that happens at the help desk. So looking at that from the potential impact or the risk of what that looks like in your environment. The other thing, and we won't dig into it, in this presentation, but this is an internal discussion that we have pretty consistently with our customers, and we're now looking at a future presentation specifically about taking operational measures and using them to talk to risk, to have that risk discussion versus that operational efficiency discussion. So digging into some other important definitions, and these that tie into how we're measuring some of this stuff. So first one is dwell time. Dwell time is how long has it been here? Everybody hears in the news, this compromise went on for months and months and months before somebody found out about it and did anything about that. That's your dwell time. So how long did this sit in your environment before somebody actually took action and remediated that? Response time. This is big in, again, in the IR, incident response and monitoring. So things that make up that overall response time is, is occurrence. So when did this initially start? When did the notification come out? Terminal, this is when I use the term terminal in relationship to that initial triage. So when did that initial triage get completed? And either that was identified as, nope, this isn't anything we need to take action as, or this is driving towards a notification or an alert that we're going to have to do some follow-up on. Detection. The term detection that I use in this context is when did something actually produce an alert? So something that actually had to be reviewed or triaged. So this is when the alert fired from IDSM, EDR, or whatever, or when you got that notification from your provider. And this is when that detection time is when they actually push that notification to you. And then remediation is when does this actually get cleaned up, and everything bad stuff was removed, holes were closed, that type of thing. So digging into each of these points a little bit further. So occurrence, when did the bad thing actually start? So this is the initial point of compromise. In an IR case and things like that, this may be actually kind of a moving target. You might have to keep moving this back as you dig in. And you want to make sure you update that and record that appropriately. And so this is important to understand that how long, going back to that dwell time, when did this initially occur and how long did it take us to get to that point where we were actually taking action on this? Notification, this is when, again, this is when somebody said, hey, go look at this. Again, this could be machine produced. This could be your team manually found something. If you're building in some threat hunting activities into your team's, work, this is, hey, when did they actually find something that, hey, found something on my hunt, we need to go look for this. Or again, this is when your provider sends you that alert that says, hey, bad thing happened, you need to go look at this. Terminal, when did this actually get closed or escalated? So this is the closure of that triage process. And again, maybe it's no action taken. You close those false positives, you close that incident ticket, and you say, nope, we're done, good to go. Or we need to escalate this, and so maybe this is when the initial triage comes in. We looked at the alert, we pushed, we said, okay, yep, we're actually got to trigger a response process and start, that deeper investigation. Again, going back to also making sure you define these terms as appropriate within the context of me as a provider. Our team considers something terminal when either we've we go through an alert that our platform produced to my analyst, and they say, yep, this is nothing that the customer needs to know about, and they close that. Or when they actually push that notification to the customer. So detection, this is the other side of that triage process. This is when somebody actually confirmed that this is something bad. So detection and terminal time may and probably will be in most cases pretty close together. Terminal is actually closing the alert. Detection is actually the formal notification. Again, depending on how you're defining these and everything, this may vary between those two. Again, as a service provider, terminal and detection for us are pretty much the one and the same as far as the time. Within a different organization, that may vary. So remediation. This is when did this actually get fixed? And again, you can lose this in response and but also in like vulnerability management, audit, things like this. When did this actually get completely closed? When did the IR provider, your team, whoever came through and said, yep, this is done. This is when that clean scan comes back on your vulnerability scan. The system owner says, hey, we patched it. Everything should be good to go. And then you run that scan and you get that confirmation that the issue's been closed and the issue's been fixed. So when we're measuring these, I like to use median time versus mean or average time. Reason I do that is median is that nice bell curve. It also isn't nearly as volatile to outlying time. So I measure, when I'm measuring metrics for my team, we're looking at the median time. So the two pieces of that is the median time to detect. So how long from the time of occurrence to the time that the detection the notification went out, and then median time to remediate. So that's the other half of that. So from the time of detection to the time that issue is closed. So within those, one of the key things, and we mentioned this at the very beginning, is build in some goals, build in some priorities, build in SLAs. And that may vary depending on your program, depending on your priorities. But whatever that is, make sure they're clearly defined. So maybe that's for your organization. Hey, we have one SLA for all of our security alerts. So our mean to detection time should be within, is always going to be within 24 hours, or maybe always within 4 hours, whatever that may be. Or maybe it's severity driven. So hey, we're going to have if this is a high alert, we expect that we have that from when the bad thing happens to when that occurs, we're talking minutes. Versus things that are lower, we have a little bit more wiggle room to identify those because we have to adjust. But make sure you have those clearly defined. Get buy-in from the rest of the party, the stakeholders in the organization. Also, use these to kind of drive improvement. Start with, hey, we've got a small team. We're just starting out with this whole program. So we're going to give ourselves a little bit more room, but or maybe you say, hey, we're going to attack this very aggressively, and we're going to work towards that. Other thing is, I'm a big fan of continuous improvement. So these numbers and these times are really important to look at, and look at every time that either a detection or a remediation time falls out of your defined SLAs. These are great conversations to have and understand. They tell a great story. Maybe it's a problem with the tool. Maybe there's issues with the team. Maybe this is, hey, we can't get to this number because we don't have enough people. We're finding all the bad things. We're finding it promptly, but our remediation times aren't where they should be. Or maybe it's a culture issue. Maybe part of security and part of running a security program is is socializing that value and having those conversations and building those relationships with the rest of the organization. So you use these, hey, every time, we have an issue with a particular office, a particular team, we're just not able to remediate in time. Use that to drive a conversation, understand how you can improve that, how you can better partner with the organization. Having worked in various corporate environments, security a lot of times is seen as an adversary or a very adversarial. Use these to change that view. Partner with people, help them understand that this is what we're trying to achieve, and we're trying to achieve it for the better, and we're all working towards the same mission. And get buy-in from the rest of the organization and support there, and use those post-mortem conversations to drive that. So again, putting it all together, again, identify who's accountable. And again, this is going to depend on which view you're looking at. Your occurrence to detection time for your specific provider, are they meeting your expectations? Have that conversation with them. Are you looking at, hey, across the whole program, here's where we're achieving, or across the whole organization? That's great at that, that high, at C-level, at that management level. Hey, our goal is to detect everything that we detect is within 4 hours of occurrence, and we'll have it remediated within 24 hours every time on a median time. And presenting that across the organization, across the whole security program. So including your monitoring, your incident response, your vulnerability management, your audit programs, your compliance, all that kind of information. Roll that up into one, and then you can, within a couple quick graphs, you can very clearly show, hey, from a security performance across our organization, here's where we're at. Tell that over a trend line. Here's where we started, here's where we're trying to get to, and here's where we're at in the middle. Are we trending towards that goal, or are we getting worse? If we're getting worse, why are we? If we're improving, that's a great story to tell. Hey, look, here's all the things, drive that into the conversation. Here's the steps we've taken. Here's where we're improving. Here's how we're driving success. Also look at time versus effectiveness. Again, budgets are tight. There's only so much money to go around. There's only so many people to go around. So look for those opportunities to improve effectiveness. What impact are you having? Is a particular tool, a particular signature having on your team? Is this particular alert source, whether it's a tool, a provider, your team itself, is it consuming more of their time than it needs to be? Are they taking 3 and 4 hours to look through this notification every time it comes in, but it's not converting to an actual actionable alert? Well, okay, that's something you should be addressing. Identifying, identifying, those gaps and those opportunities when you're falling out of those SLAs that you've defined. So just some quick examples. These are screenshots from actual dashboards that I run within the organization here. So this is across. These are the numbers are the 14-day, and then the little graphs are 7-day medians across each of these. So 2 hours occurrence to detection. We're talking. So some of the other numbers we're using is detected to claim. So how long did it take on a, what is the median time for when that alert was generated to somebody, in the SOC team actually grabbing that and looking at that. So that's one of those numbers that I look at from, hey, do I have enough staff? Are we getting through the work fast enough? Are we getting in front of somebody fast enough? Looking at claim to detect and draft it. So, we're looking at approximately 7 minutes from when one of my analysts grabs something to them starting that notification. They said, I've identified it and I'm pushing that notification to the customer. And then, claim to hidden. So we have processes in place that say, hey, this is, if this is a false positive, we can very quickly identify that. And so we, basically negligible amount for my team to say, hey, you know what, we're able to process through those false positives very quickly. So that tells me that, our false positive rate is probably fairly manageable, and we're getting through the information and at a pace that is reasonable within the SLAs that we've communicated to our customers. Then, again, same kind of numbers and same kind of stuff, looking at this from an individual identification. How long did this take, this individual alert, how long did it take to get from start to finish, from when the bad thing happened to getting that notification pushed out to the customer. This one, hey, we found it and we had the alert, reviewed it, triaged it, did everything, and we had the alert out the door in about 30 minutes. There was some other information in there that that probably was some lead-up information or lead-up identification that was preemptive, maybe some preemptive activity that on the outside edge of that was within 40 minutes. But then from the actual occurrence to an analyst getting that in front of him was only a couple minutes, so it took him a little while to investigate. But all that information, this is all from the same measure, the same data store, and then we're just looking at this, again, overlaying a different lens on the same information. Looking at this from from an overall organization, what's the median detect to and median response time for a specific organization. On the detection time, the majority of everything is happening well within those SLAs. We look on the but we look at the detection time. We've got some stuff that's still outlying. Those are areas that I'm going to drill into, and I have a conversation with the customer and say, hey, what's going on here? Dig into this. Maybe it's maybe that's a problem on our side as a provider. We're not getting to that data fast enough, or maybe there's a challenge with a certain portion of their organization where they're not able to get us the data fast enough. Maybe it's field teams or remote teams that they're on and offline, or they're not connected to the internet, and so they hop on at the airport, pull down their email real quick, and then they open up that spam message while they're offline on a plane, and it's taking several hours before that comes back online for us then to be able to identify those threats. Same thing on the response time. So how long is it taking that customer to respond? There's a fair percentage of their stuff that's it's not getting remediated or cleaned up in what I would expect as a reasonable period of time. So again, that's a good conversation to have. What's the challenge there? How can we help? Where do we need to socialize and understand and better put process around, better have, build better relationships so we can close those security holes and get that faster. One of the great values, and I think, one of the things I see from like a CISO's role is to build those relationships. It's not their job isn't to make everything secure. It's to build relationships and help get buy-in and provide the tools for the organization to help make the organization secure. Again, looking at, taking these numbers, let's look at an overall company snapshot. We can see within the organization, certain groups within the organization have bigger challenges at different times of the year. So accounting, looking at our accounting, we had a bunch of activity from the accounting team, looks like a lot of unwanted software. So maybe that was somebody in the team said, hey, here's some cool tool I found, and started distributing that across the team, and found out it's all bundled with toolbars and pop-ups and everything else like that. And that's a good opportunity to like, hey, what happened? What happened here? Looking at, we have a different team that around the end of the year. So maybe this was all the end of the year holiday spam that got hit and generated a bunch of stuff. Or maybe, hey, this is hey, this silly card or little animated snowman or whatever those type of things are, and that's what's going on there. So looking at these different, and this is good conversation you can have at the organizational level. You can talk to those functional areas and say, hey, here we're seeing these types of challenges. How can we help you? How can we reduce this number? Help them, get some accountability and buy-in, and they'll work with you and improve that, and you present this. I'm also a big fan of all these things that you're capturing, all these numbers that you're presenting. Make them publicly available within your organization. Part of your accountability and part of showing that value is making sure that information is available to the whole company. So make sure that you're holding yourself accountable by presenting and showing where your team is performing. So that's what we have for the presentation. I have a few more other questions that were queued up here that I'll jump into, and then. So one of the first ones is, can you apply the same framework outside of security? I've been a security guy pretty much my whole career, but the same concept works in any sort of service provider kind of aspect. Looking at it from these basic ideas are largely taken from like call center reporting and things like that. So if you're in any sort of service provider, you're looking for any sort of kind of prioritization or completion of work and anything like that, you can certainly take the same idea and overlay that in other parts of the organization. Absolutely, in like the IT organization and things like that. One other one. So my team is barely able to keep up, much less set aside the time for developing a framework. Where do we start, and how can we make this effort as low friction as possible? Like I said, I set this program up for Fortune 500. We had a team of 3 people that ran all the tools. We did all the response, we did all the monitoring, and we had to do all the reporting. And a lot of this came out of necessity. My team and I got tired of every quarter when the CISO would come to us and say, hey, I've got to present to the board and show what security is doing. And we'd scramble around and pull some numbers and make something up, and none of it actually ever made a lot of sense. And then so we stopped and took some time. We said, okay, we're going to make this real simple. All of our alerts goes into a simple help desk ticketing system, and then we use just a simple Postgres backend database, and then we just pulled all of them. We made sure the fields that we wanted were there, and then we just did some simple queries that we fed into into Google Charting Analytics. And provided all the different views that we needed to present, and all that information was easily tracked because that ticketing system, as soon as that alert would come in, we had that start time. As we investigated, we could update the occurrence time if we needed to, close that out, build some good process around it, and this became very repeatable and very actionable. And then as we added tools to our portfolio, we just made sure that they pointed into that system. We captured those same key fields, and we continued on, and it became a very successful program, and we got a lot of buy-in and from the rest of the organization. It became from a simple kind of need-based approach, it became a very key reporting aspect, and we actually had executives that were regularly checking that and having conversations about improvements and trends that we were seeing, and being able to tie those to things going on in the world and all that kind of information. And really, just by making that available on our intranet and doing those simple things, got a lot better, more buy-in, a lot, more support for the security program. So again, kind of KISS principle, keep it simple, make it repeatable, build process around it, and look at it as from a consistency standpoint. Let's see here. So those are all the kind of questions that we have. I would encourage everyone to check out our blog at redcanary.com/blog. We post fairly regularly on all topics similar to this, and all a variety of topics that are I think are of value. And I'm kind of biased as I'm one of the contributors. Or you can feel free to hit me up on Twitter, or reach out to, if you want to have a further conversation, with myself or one of the other members of the security team here. Even if it's just, hey, we've got questions of how you're doing things, we're happy to have that conversation. It doesn't have to be a sales conversation. It'll just be an opportunity to talk through some of the challenges and some of the things that we're seeing and some of the things that you're seeing within your organization, and have an honest conversation of what strategies you can take around that. So thank you for your time.